Good afternoon. Today I am sharing with you a sociological perspective covered in Dr. Lisa Whitaker's Sociology 101 course at Arizona State University, in order to fulfill the requirement for the Barrett Honors College Honors Contract assignment. I will focus on the conflict perspective, as well as on the proclaimed father of social conflict, Karl Marx. Conflict theory is defined by the course textbook Getting Started in Sociology by Lisa Whitaker as a macro-sociological perspective whose main focus is the competition between groups to control resources such as wealth, power, and influence. According to conflict theorists, social change is not only good, if not inevitable, it is the way a society progresses. The conflict perspective, or social conflict theory, encompasses the ideals that society is a breeding ground for inequality, which in turn generates conflict and social change. Society is believed to be constructed in a fashion where few members benefit at the expense of many. We as a society possess various different amounts of material and non-material resources. However, the more powerful groups utilize their power in order to exploit those that are weaker. Furthermore, we see that such inequality stems from issues rooted in race, class, sex, and age differences, and we see a grave amount of focus placed upon the interactions and conflict that arises between the dominant group in society versus the smaller, weaker minority groups. For many conflict theorists suggest, it is in the interest of those who have wealth to keep and extend what they own, whereas it is in the interest of those who have little or no wealth to try to improve their lot in life. The father of social conflict theory, Karl Marx, was a German philosopher, sociologist, economist, and revolutionary socialist. Marx, in his studies, proposed that there is a dramatic clash between the owners and workers in a society, as he believed that in order to survive, an individual must work, and one either owns the productive property or works for someone who does. You might consider a situation such as paying rent towards a house. The conflict theorist argues that this relationship is unequal and favors the owners. Renters may pay rent for 50 years and still gain absolutely no right or economic interest with the property. It is this type of relationship that the conflict theorist will use to show that social relationships are about power and exploitation. Furthermore, Marx argued that through a dialectic process, social evolution was directed by the result of class conflict. He argues that human history is all about this conflict, a result of the strong rich exploiting the poor weak. From such a perspective, money is made through the exploitation of the worker. It is argued thus that in order for a factory owner to make money, he must pay his workers less than they deserve. Marx believed that our Western society developed through four main periods: primitive communism, ancient society, feudal society, and capitalist society. Primitive communism, illustrated by societies of prehistory, exemplifies a classless society, while the remaining societies seem to be divided into two primary classes: master and slaves within the ancient society, lords and serfs within the feudal society, and capitalist and wage laborers in the capitalist society. That said, one may wonder where Marx's conflict perspective stemmed from in its own right. A rebel at heart, Karl Marx was born in 1818 in Trier, Prussia. He was the oldest surviving boy in a family of 9 children. Both of his parents were Jewish, and he descended from a long line of rabbis. But his father, a lawyer, converted to Lutheranism in 1816 due to contemporary laws barring Jews from higher society. Marx attended the University of Bonn for about a year before he was imprisoned for drunkenness and his duel with another student. His parents enrolled him at the University of Berlin, where his engagement in situations of conflict only continued. As a university student, Marx was a part of a movement known as the Young Hegelians, who strongly criticized the political and cultural establishments of the day. They were challenging existing institutions on all fronts, including religion, philosophy, ethics, and politics. Later, when he became a journalist, the radical nature of Marx's writings would eventually get him expelled by the governments of Germany, France, and Belgium. And after receiving his degree, Marx began writing for the liberal democratic Prussian newspaper, which the Prussian government banned as too radical the following year. Marx's involvement in groups much like modern-day interest groups and his experience with excessive situational conflict are the likely roots behind why he has been named the father of social conflict. That said, it is likely in our modern world that classes develop within market economies in which individuals are in constant competition for economic gain. Individuals who are in similar positions within the market economy gain similar economic rewards. Thus, a person's class typically corresponds to his position within the market economy. One's economic position also has a dramatic effect on his or her life chances. It will directly affect their chances and opportunities to obtain the things defined socially desirable. Although theorists such as Marx claim that growth and development stem from the conflict between opposing parties, cooperation has also been deemed a source of healthy growth and progression. As a society, it is critical that we determine the situations in which conflict is entirely necessary to produce change, as compared to those situations under which cooperation and harmony may lead us to the greatest advances. Contemporary conflict theory, as discussed within the course textbook, discusses the notion of interest groups. Interest groups are persons who act in a cooperative, coordinated fashion, such as LGBT individuals, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, the American Tobacco Association, political parties, feminists, etc. The basis of their cooperation is a common goal, and they seek to have an impact on some socio-political issue on which decisions are to be made. The weaker interest groups focused on an issue may seek to unseat the dominant group, or to gain a larger share of the pie, which may simply be to voice their opinions on the issue, or to have a say in decision-making. Conflict theory can be used to analyze several aspects of our modern society. One may use it to view the competition between students in a classroom, or view the divide between Protestants and Catholics as a battle over spiritual resources. The theory can also be utilized to analyze the prominent topic of the cycle of poverty. Perhaps one may ask, who benefits from the current higher educational system in the United States? The answer for a conflict theorist, attuned to unequal distributions of wealth, is the wealthy. After all, higher education in the United States is not free. The educational system often screens out poorer individuals, not because they are unable to compete academically, but because they cannot afford to pay for their education. Because the poor are unable to obtain higher education, they are generally also unable to obtain higher paying jobs, and thus they remain poor. Such an arrangement translates into a vicious cycle of poverty. This illustrates just one situation of many in our modern world that corresponds to the conflict perspective and conflict theory. Our society must seek out a system of economic production that can improve the needs of all members of our society. Thank you.